Life is sweet. Let it sweep you off your feet.
Hi, this is Allie and Find Your Joy. Please remember to like and subscribe. Today, oh my gosh, this is going to be fabulous. We have with us Sarah Cheesecake Moras. And Sarah is, well, she's many things, but what we're going to talk about first is her time, 20 years as a martial artist. Is that the proper way to say that? Martial artist? Is that so
Yeah,
right? Right?
yeah.
And she spent 10 years as a UFC pro fighter. So I'm really excited because I'm always happy when I love to see women do things that they're passionate about and that might not be in the little realm of what girls usually do. So, Sarah, hi, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So Sarah and I met. And you'll get to find out about her other life a little bit later, or maybe in another episode. But we met at a wellness fair where she was there talking about her new business. But when the first thing that I noticed was a poster up there, and it was a UFC poster, and I was like, "Well, this is going to be interesting." So, I don't know. I guess let's start at the beginning. What was the draw? How did this all start? How did you get into it?
Yeah, I guess like it goes way back. I was 18 when I started, and I actually wanted to be a forest firefighter, but I was too young to apply. So I went to a gym and thought I'd get in shape and just fell in love with the fighting aspect of it. So yeah,
Wow.
just the way the world works and how it came about.
Right. And so when the fighting aspect of it, what was the first thing that you started to study? Was it kickboxing, boxing? What did you start to study at first?
Yeah, so I started with jiu-jitsu, which is like the grappling side of it on the ground, like kind of like wrestling, but once it hits the ground with submissions. Yeah, so that's where
Oh,
I started. And the gym I was at was also running MMA promotions. So it was very quick that I got into the other aspects of the sport as well,
okay.
or what we knew about it at the time.
Right. So mixed martial arts, just for anybody who's I never assume anyone knows what initials stand for. So
Yeah.
they were doing mixed martial arts there, and tell us explain mixed martial arts for somebody who maybe doesn't know much about it. What is it? What does that look like?
Yeah, so mixed martial arts is mixing the martial arts. So it's generally kickboxing and boxing, wrestling, judo, and then the jiu-jitsu side of it. But then you're also combining it all so that you're striking on the ground as well as submissions. And you're just doing all the aspects blended together where rather than separately.
Right, okay. So at 18, so how long did you when a person first gets into that, how long do you train before you I'm guessing that there's training, just the physical aspect and sparring
Yeah.
for however long. Like how long do you train before you spar and how long do you spar before you actually get in a match? How does that all work?
Yeah, so it varies for everyone, and I think nowadays is a lot different than when I started. When I started, there was one black belt in jiu-jitsu in all of Canada.
Oh,
And I
wow.
believe I was probably one of the first, if not the first, amateur fights to ever happen in Canada. So I've been around the game for quite a while, and it's not the same now as it was back then.
Okay.
So when I started, it was more so like this martial art versus that martial art when you
Okay.
fought, but now everyone's so well rounded that you have to know the whole game when you fight.
Okay. So at first it would have been just jujitsu against and your opponent would have been someone who was also trained in jujitsu and then boxing and boxing and
No,
kickboxing and kickbox.
no,
That's how it used to be, or it is now, or used to be.
it was actually more like someone that did jujitsu against someone that boxed. So it would be two different martial arts against each other to kind of see what the ultimate martial art was.
Oh, so did it start in a way to compare what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah,
Efficacy, isn't it? But to
the
see
different
which was
disciplines.
better. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's kind of how it started, and then people started to blend the different martial arts together, and now it's just like one big
oh,
combination of everything. So, yeah, when you started, people weren't really striking on the ground. Um, People with striking didn't have much ground game. People with ground game didn't have much stand up. People with wrestling didn't have much of jiu-jitsu or striking, but now you have to have all of it.
oh, okay. And so I'm going to ask these questions because I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious about this. So striking on the ground,
Mm.
um, how does that work and why? Like, so, and I'm gonna tell you why I'm asking this, okay? Because
Yeah.
I don't, and I think it might be generational, right? It might be a generational bump up against this in general. So it's just part of the sport.
Yeah.
But at any time, if a person submits, striking stops immediately. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I guess like a submission can be any variety of things. It's generally like a choke or like a joint manipulation where you're in a position where if they keep going, you'll break their arm or their leg or their ankle or whatever it is. So the person opts out of the fight by tapping out, which is
Okay.
called a submission. But you can tap out due to strikes as well.
Oh, okay. Because it's funny from a person who like we were chatting the other day and I had a conversation about well now it's maybe it's 15 years ago. I'm not really sure anymore, but somebody that I know, like I'd known him since he was little, his mom and I were friends that was into it. I was like, well, I don't know, because when we were kids and we got in scraps in school, there was always the I give thing. And it just seems like people are on the ground and still getting hit. And then he was explaining to me about, okay, so it's not really like that. It's not like you've got them down and you're not stopping, because at any time they say it's over, then it's over. That person, it's over when they say it's over. So that's how that works, right?
Yeah, yeah, except we train to be hit on the ground. We train to hit on the ground. We train to
Right.
counteract the stuff. So it's not just like once you get hit, you give up. There's a lot more to it with the
Yeah,
whole.
no, 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 not but
I know.
well, unless it's me, because I probably would.
At the beginning, it's very intimidating with all of it. But
Yeah, for
as you
sure.
learn the technique and the skill, the aspect of it all changes.
Yeah, and so as part of the training, learning, I'm guessing how to take a hit and how to like kind of roll away with that. Like, how does that all?
Yeah, there's different ways that you learn how to hit. A lot of it's just seeing it coming. I find when you see something coming, it's way less likely to actually hurt you, even if it's like more powerful than ones that you don't see coming. I think on a subconscious level, you learn how to brace with it in the proper ways when you see stuff coming, but you also learn how to block, defend, move, roll with it, or even step into it, because if you create the strike to be shorter rather than longer, you're not at the end of their power, you're in the middle of their power.
Right. Oh,
That can
this is
create
good.
a lot of the damage too.
This is life in general too, isn't it? Right? When you see something coming, it hurts less.
Yeah.
If you can prepare for whatever crap is
Yeah.
about to hit you in life, whether that's finances or a relationship or if you're in the ring, or
Yeah.
it just is way better if you see it coming. So okay, so now you've seen this thing, you're gonna go into firefighting, and then you go to the gym and you think, hey, this is interesting, and you start to do that. So at what point do you start? When did you start to actually do matches? Like so you were 18 when it all started.
Yeah. So about 6 months into training, I went into my first jiu-jitsu competition in Vancouver, and I back then the internet wasn't what it is now. So like now you know the weight classes and you register online and you know who your opponents are going to be. But back then I had no idea what the weight classes were. I just kind of showed up and I was 2 pounds over the weight class limit for the one below. So I had to go against people way bigger than me. Um, and I just kind of showed up and went with it. And back then there weren't many females in the sport. So yeah, so I think there were
Oh,
3 other women in my division, which was actually surprisingly good at the time. But yeah, I ended up winning that tournament surprisingly somehow with the little knowledge I had at the time. Um, and then about another 6 months after that, my coach at the time was putting on a promotion for fights, and he's like, "I got you a fight," and I was like, "I'm not ready to fight." And he's like, "Well, I already agreed to it, so you can back out if you want." And I was like, "I don't back out."
yeah, 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 yeah. That's what helped to carry you along all that way, I'm sure. Okay,
Yeah.
so when you're saying a fight, that's an actual MMA or UFC type thing. That's because I want to make sure I'm understanding the terminology because jujitsu, that's a match, right? Is that so there's a
For me, yes, I call it a match with jiu-jitsu. A lot of people call it fights, but I think if you're not getting hit, it's not really considered a fight.
yeah, yeah, that's what I was trying to I'm trying to understand a little bit about
Yeah.
because there is, proper terminology to describe it all, right? So your
Yeah.
first one was a match, right?
Yeah.
And then so the fight is going to be because I have found in life when I did, like I was saying the other, I took boxing for a few years and I found it was a lot more fun to punch than to be punched.
Yeah. Yeah, that's generally how it
I
goes.
have found, much like with credit cards, it's much nicer to spend than to pay. So
Yeah.
it's so when you're so in your first match, so that was at like just after 6 months, or
Yeah.
is this your first fight? Pardon me.
With
So
jiu-jitsu, and then my first fight was about 11 months into training, which is kind of fast, but also just kind of how it was
yeah,
back then.
right. And so at what point were you mixing into the martial arts with, if you first started with jujitsu, did you right away start with learning boxing and kickboxing? Was it sort of happening pretty early on, or?
It was pretty early on. The gym that I was at had a more wrestling focused base.
Mhm.
So a lot of jiu-jitsu gyms, they'll start on their bum, or they'll like sit to their bum as quickly as possible and start the fight. Whereas wrestling, like you're actually trying to take someone down, be on top, and a little more of a dominant style.
Right.
Um, so that's kind of the background that I started with. So they were incorporating wrestling in with the jiu-jitsu that I was doing. And then a few months in, we got a striking coach in as well. So I started working on that aspect of it.
Okay. And the language, even when you're talking to someone who actually does this professionally or as a sport, isn't, just learning
Yeah.
all of those things like
Yeah.
a striking coach. So someone who comes and teaches, maybe a boxer or something, who comes and teaches you the technique of when to twist and when to not and what
Yeah.
all
How to
that.
throw a punch, how to block it, kicks, knees, elbows, and then there's clinch too. So you're grabbing like the head to control and move them, or you get underhooks, which is grabbing underneath the armpit
Yeah.
and grabbing their shoulder. And then that's also like a hook sort of thing that you can move people with.
And you have one arm free to strike
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. So you could have one arm and then hitting them, or you could have double underhooks to like gain control to look for a takedown.
Right. So, so I'm just going to ask everything I'm
Yeah.
curious
Yeah.
about. So, because I have 7 brothers. So, I mean, I fighting what is physical fighting, whereas a lot of females didn't grow up maybe with that. I grew up with a lot of that. So, and I had a lot of rules in my life, right? I learned at a very early age that things that are not a sport, right? So I learned at a very early age, never hit anyone you don't want to be hit back by. That was like one of my very first things I think I ever learned growing up with brothers
Yeah.
was that if you're going in, you make sure you are ready and completely willing to get hit back. But it's a very different thing. And there was usually anger, right? There was because when I watch someone who's boxing or any other kind of martial art,
Yeah.
other than, a bit of smack talk between boxers seems to be a little bit more that, you know what I mean? There's a
Yeah.
little bit of that. So are you angry sometimes? Does that, or is it, I mean, maybe
It's
after you just got a good shot to the head, maybe, I guess, but
actually, like, I mean, everyone's different with it,
right,
but I I was more angry before I started training, and then this outlet definitely like helped hone in that anger.
right,
Um, but it wasn't really like that because when you get angry, you're not thinking strategically. You're thinking out of anger, fear, whatever it is, and then you're actually creating more openings for your opponent to get you with. So you always have to be very calm and collected, but one of my strategies with some of my training partners and people would be to get them angry because then I could pick them apart and be sloppier with their techniques.
so you're good at smack talk.
Now we're just like making them angry by hitting them hard or getting the better of them and it gets to their head and then just being able to
Right.
pick them up after that.
It's interesting to me the whole time you're talking about, I'm just thinking about how much just in life in general, like
Yeah,
all of these things, they're all transferable skills, right? Like in life in general, if we get ourselves in a state, a tizzy, my mom used to call it, if we
yeah,
get ourselves in a tizzy, pissed off, angry, whatever, it gets really difficult to focus on what needs to be done,
yeah, yeah.
no
Yeah,
matter what it is in life.
yeah, I know. Like fighting has so many like correlations to life. I feel like I built a lot of my life skills off of it.
Yeah,
Like one of the main things that I say with training is and coaching, because I coach as well now, is the first step to fixing a problem is realizing that there is a problem that needs to be fixed.
right.
So when you're doing a technique and you're doing it wrong, you don't know that you can't fix it until you know that you're doing it wrong, and then you have to figure out how to do it right. But if you don't know you're doing it wrong, you're never going to learn how to fix it. And I think that transfers over to everything in life
Everything.
in general.
Absolutely everything. Just I love that. Yeah, sort it out what you're doing. And so that's why when so often when I see when I hear someone speak who has had a lot of training in martial arts specifically,
Yeah,
there tends to be this incredible grounding.
yeah.
And I respect it a lot.
Thank
It's
you.
something, yeah, I do. I was so impressed with you as a human being. Yeah, just how you carry yourself and stuff. You were across from me for 7 hours, and if I wasn't chatting up some of the people that were coming through, I was just watching the grace and strength in which you carry yourself, and I'm guessing that that comes from 20 years of learning. So what part, okay, so what the mental game then, what part of it, so there's the game that, okay, it's awesome, you can handle it when you're down on the ground, which I think is a pretty cool way to learn how to do it, because um, down on the ground is where I would never want to be in a fight. In my thinking, right? I think, oh, now I'm screwed. Like
Yeah,
because now size and strength. There's a whole bunch of other play in that game, just in life in general. So you learned the ground first, and then standing and doing all that. So that's interesting, and so that wasn't as intimidating for you then. Getting down on the ground isn't like, oh crap, now I'm in trouble.
no, and I'm continuing to learn always in all
Right,
aspects of it. So the jiu-jitsu game is a hard game to get good at. But it's one
right,
of those games where size and strength doesn't actually matter when you have technique. So I can go
right.
against people a lot bigger than me and get the better of them. Whereas in striking, if you're going against someone bigger than you, you might be able to move and stuff. But if you get caught with something, it can be very damaging.
Okay, okay. So then what kind of training happens, like the mental side of it, like the mental part of the game? So okay, so you're learning the physical aspects, and then there's training, I'm guessing, to help your body to become stronger,
Yeah.
whatever that is, weights, running, I don't know whatever that part of it is. But the mental part of the game, that's got to be so much. What kind of like what do you do for that?
Yeah.
What the heck are they teaching you? What are they
I
feeding you people over
I
there?
know. And that, like, to be honest, that's an aspect that that has kind of been lacking until recently, and it's still just getting introduced, even though we talk about a fight being 90% mental. Not a lot of training and coaching goes into that aspects unless you're seeking it outside with like counselors and therapists and
Oh,
mind coaches. So it's not as integrated as it should be, which is kind of why I like the BQH, the past life regression, that sort of side of it, because that I'm doing now, because I think it will help connect with that belief system, with the mindset of going into it, because it's all about believing. If you
right.
believe that you're going to do well, you're going to do well. So it's just keeping that mindset, even when you're getting your ass kicked in the gym every day.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's really hard to be in that like positive mindset, because if you're always winning in the gym, then you're not being challenged.
Right. And that makes sense. You're not going to ever, it would make sense to me that a person would never really be able to elevate themselves to whatever level that they would like to be if they win. Eh, then you just
Yeah.
have almost like a spoiled child who's never been told no, right? Then
Yeah.
no is so shocking and you don't even know what to do with it. So it that part of it makes sense to the challenge, but I'm very interested in so I wonder, so here I'm like, oh, now I'm just, my imagination's running. So do you think someone is maybe predisposed to having the type of mindset that it takes to be, because I'm just thinking of, I'm looking at my own
Yeah.
family, right? Like we
Yeah.
have athletes in my family.
Yeah.
We have artists in the family. We have, more sciencey people, and they can be, and like a martial artist, that I mean, it can mix, and everybody can be a little bit of a blend, and that all takes a style of discipline. It appears to me that when one is really committed to any kind of athletic endeavor, that there is a very specific kind of discipline and almost like a calling, like because there's just a way that a person works their body that it has to, I don't know, it's interesting to me. Mind you, learning to play an instrument, I don't know. But I just wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, I think with everything there's a sort of discipline if you want to get good at it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think the mindset where we were talking about before is a really important aspect of it all. And just with getting good at anything is going to be that you're going to have challenges, and it's more about your resilience to it, whether you can keep going through it or whether you let it set you back, whether it makes you stop, or whether you just push through it and keep going and know that, you're doing this for a reason, for a purpose, and you're going to get better with it.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, is how much can you take and how much can you keep going.
Yeah, and how much? So I have kind of two questions. The one, oh gosh, I hope I remember it because it's quickly leaving my brain. Stop, stop, get it, get it, get it. The one is are you, so have you ever been really afraid to face it? Like, have you ever gone into a match and maybe you're going to say every time, because I used to sing and I had anxiety almost every time before I went on stage,
Yeah.
but and then I was fine once I was there. But have you ever been like really scared? Like I'm like you're like facing someone that feels like a Goliath, and what steps did you take? If yes is the answer to that, what steps did you take? First of all, to not show that to the opponent, and then
Yeah.
probably more importantly, to pull that together and not show that to yourself in a way, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, like you said, with like recitals and different things, like no matter what you do, you're probably going to be nervous if you care about it. If you don't
Yeah.
care, then you're probably not going to be as nervous. But if it's something that you're passionate about, you're going to feel those nerves. And the more passionate you are about it, probably the more nervous you're going to be. So
Yes.
that's definitely something that we deal with on a regular basis. And it's also something that you deal with every time you go into sparring, because you don't know exactly what's going to happen, and you get way more injured in sparring than I've ever been in a fight. So,
Oh, really?
because you do it so much more frequently.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
It's a numbers game.
yeah, a fight's 15 minutes. Training's like 4 hours every day. So you're gonna get beat up a whole lot more in training than in a fight. So every day going into training, if you're training hard and preparing for high level matches, fights, your nerves are gonna be playing a factor in all of that.
Right,
So,
right.
and also every time you get hit, anytime you're in a bad position, you have to stay composed because if you show that a kick hurt you or a punch hurt you, your opponent's always going to capitalize on it. So
Right. They're going to hit that spot over and over, right? Or what?
yes,
I mean,
or
I'm
yeah,
just guessing
whatever.
what I would do.
Yeah, for sure. Whatever it is, you see a weakness and you go after it, just like animals in the wild.
Yes.
So you can't show any of that in your training either because everyone wants to win for the most part, even in training. I mean, like if you're a good training partner, you let the people that are fighting work on certain aspects and you do different things. But for the most part, you're also trying to beat your training partners and give them a real look at what a fight's going to feel like.
Right. So did, I jotted this down because I didn't want to forget it. You said something about something being a good match, right? Like something, uh, and would you say that a good match can be a good match no matter the outcome? Like I would think that that would be the goal, that win, lose, or draw. I don't even know if I don't, I mean,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, you're
that a good match would be what you're going for. Like even if I don't win this thing, it will be good to me if I do everything I can. If I leave everything out there, then I don't have to win it for it to be great. Is that
yeah,
this?
like to some extent, but also in fighting, it's got this weird aspect to it where you get paid to show up to the match and then you get that much pay again to win. So basically, if
Right.
you don't win, you lose half of your money.
Right. And then your prospects, I'm guessing, because the more
Yeah,
wins you have,
yeah,
I'm guessing that that's going to
yeah,
make your prospects better every time in
yeah,
terms of marketing. Your marketing is better. I get that. I get that because
yeah,
I'm like, it's why you want a book to go bestseller in at least one category.
yeah,
It's the same book. It's just it's if you do something and someone you win, if you have some kind of a win in it, that it's going to
yeah.
make it better going forward. You're going to, yeah, that's okay. I thought that probably it's something like that. So so you personally, I mean, I'm thinking at 18, how how old do you think you were when you started to think I need to do something more about my mental game? Like, did that come to you quickly?
No, it definitely didn't.
It wouldn't have with me. That's why I'm
It,
wondering. I would have
I
just thought,
know it
punch
actually like
harder. That'll fix it. Like,
it came to me more at the end of my career than the beginning of my
right,
career, and like even now, I'm not the same person that I was at the beginning. So a lot of this different thought process also comes from me being a coach and seeing how people react to things and what makes them mentally strong and reflecting back on my career and where I didn't have that confidence that I needed going into some of my fights. And yeah, I just wish it was such a bigger part of the whole game. And I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate that still because it's all still so new.
right. That's interesting. Well, I'm guessing that I'm just thinking out loud here, right? But I'm guessing that even something there's different courses that people can take even online around. My background is in what counseling and things like that, right?
Yeah,
And there's I take courses all the time online that just help me to understand a new little thing.
yeah,
When I'm doing when I don't do that anymore, but of course, everything we do as a coach, you're going to do it as a person who does. And I'm going to have to ask you again, what it is, not the past life regression, but there's another thing around energetic healing that you do, and it's three letters. It's an abbreviate. It's whatever you
yeah. It's BQH, Beyond Quantum Healing.
Okay, beyond
Yeah.
quantum healing it. Okay, so and we'll get into that because we'll be heading over there soon.
Yeah.
But briefly, if you can,
Yeah.
if you can briefly and get people prepared for what the next episode is going to be on a little bit. What is beyond quantum energetic healing, and how, if at all, does that play in your role as a coach?
Yeah. So beyond quantum healing is like a hypnosis based regression therapy that's also
Oh,
spiritual. So we can go into past lives, but we can also find a lot of answers to issues that we have in our current life. So one of the
okay.
main things that I'm really curious about in being a coach, I have a pool of people that I can do sessions with, but it's just finding that belief in yourself and why you do things, how you do them, and how you can just go at things and be more confident with it all. So I'm really curious about the whole mindset with the transfer of both. Um, but the BQH can
Wow.
be anything. We've gone to past lives on this earth, on other planets, as different beings and non-beings. We've gone to this current life, to future lives, to the future path options of this life. And then we've also connected with spirit guides, higher selves, and in like the heaven sort of realm, depending on what your belief system is,
Right,
spiritual
right.
realm.
I was going
Uh,
to say that. And
yeah,
so how much do you like, because there's, when you're coaching, you're going to have someone who's anyone from a absolute atheist who does not participate in any of this to a born again Christian who maybe doesn't
yeah.
dabble in this to someone who wants to soar into the cosmos and probably everybody in between. So I'm guessing that you learn to, just like you learn,
Yeah.
I'm guessing as a coach, you have somebody like me who might want to come in and get some coaching, and I'm going to be a very different student than a 20-year-old who would like to actually wrestle.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
you
guess
might want to once you get into it.
that'll be so. I can't. I don't even know. Am I going to say this? I'm going to say well, I usually do end up. I'm going to tell you a story, but I never sound good in my own stories. Uh, the thought, um, the thought of being pinned down.
Yeah.
I actually talking about it terrifies me. The thought, and that I get it, right? I come from a person that has had multiple abuses, so I have that in me, but it almost makes me almost, I'm not sure if my voice squeaks, almost, I don't know if I'll ever get the courage, but it almost would make me want to. Boxing was attractive because I was going to never be on the ground. Like, never being on the ground is a very big deal to me in my life in
Yeah.
general. Um,
Yeah.
but the thought, when we were talking about jujitsu, I left and I started to have like anxiety, the thought that someone would pin me because um I think it's worth talking about for the listeners because my book is The Art of Healing Trauma.
Yeah.
And so I don't talk much about my assaults in my book. I just say that they happened. I talk
Yeah.
more about how to be okay with life after, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is that being pinned down is a terrifying thing for me, the thought of it.
Yeah.
You know what it makes me kind of want to do? It makes me think maybe at 65, I'm not saying I want to pay someone to pin me down, but I would like to maybe learning how to not be pinned down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe that. Okay,
That
so
would
I said
eliminate
it. So
that
if
fear. Yeah.
living with this fear for probably my first time at 3 years old, so for 62 years and multiple times since then till I was about 20. So for over 60 years, I have lived with that fear. And gee, shit just got real. I'm all
Yeah.
sweaty, almost crying now. But you know what? I just thought of that. I'm because I don't like to piss around here. I like to be
Yeah.
honest with people. So I don't know if you're a listener and you're thinking, I have had some pretty, hideous things happen to me, and I can't even stand what you're talking about right now. So first of all, my apologies if that's triggering at all. But mostly what it is that we get better. I used to be afraid of water, so I took scuba diving. Like
Awesome.
that, do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I used to,
Yeah.
as a kid, I almost drowned, blah, 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 blah. Then I was in a boating accident, blah, 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 blah. And I had this big fear of water. So I
Yeah.
didn't know how else to fix it. I went and took scuba diving classes.
Yeah.
And I was terrified about 90% of the time. And
Yeah.
then when I got to the 10% that I wasn't, it was really awesome. Um,
Yeah.
so, okay, that is my thought. I am going to I'm going to give this some more consideration because I think that I deserve to be free of one more thing that holds me back in life. Woo woo. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, so there we go. That's true confessions of Alley time. So that's really awesome. I think we're getting close to the end of this one.
Okay.
I would we haven't even touched on so much stuff. Like you traveled around
Yeah.
the world, you did all of these things. I'm kind of looking at the time and I let's if we can do some more for about 5 minutes, if that's okay. Maybe we'll
Yeah,
do
for
this a
sure.
bit longer. I'd love to hear about, okay, so you started doing all this and then you started traveling the world and do like where did you fight? And did you fight men then when you're saying there wasn't that many women? Did that have to happen? And how does that all look? And I don't know, tell me anything you would like to tell me about all that because I think it's
Yeah.
fascinating. I
There,
want
there's a lot to it. So, in actual fights, I never fought men. It was
okay,
always women for fights, which made it
right,
difficult to find fights. And I went long periods without having fights.
right.
But almost all of my training was with men.
I'm guessing.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
was, yeah, a big part of it. As for traveling, when I have been training about 3 years, a lady named Rosie Sexton, who was ranked number one in the world at 125 pounds, was looking for a training partner and she lived in England. So I messaged her and said, "Hey, if you want a training partner, like I would love to come out and train with you." And I thought, I bet you so many people are interested in doing this. I have a little chance, but shoot my shot, right? And she messaged me back, like, "Yeah, let's come out." So I went out there and I lived with her and trained with her for a year, seeing what the best in the world do. And just training beside her, being her main training partner for a year. And I had my first,
Goosebumps.
yeah.
That's
So,
amazing.
so I had my last amateur fight and my first pro fight out there with her. And then, you know how the universe works. So I got a calling to come back home. I didn't understand it. But that goes into a whole spiel about my life.
Right, right.
But yeah, like I heard a voice saying, "Come home, Sarah." And I didn't want to come home. And it's like, "Sarah, come home now." And I came home. And 2 weeks after I came home, my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer. So
Oh, I'm
was
so
able to
sorry.
spend that last year being around him. But it's just how the world works, you know? So
How
it's funny
awesome that
how,
you heard it and how awesome that you listened.
yeah. So it's like wild how it all works. So I was able to be close to him that last year that he was around. And then I also switched gyms. I moved to Kelowna and got some really good training. That's where I met my husband. So, everything kind of all
Yay.
works out. And that's where I was at that gym when I got signed. Well, I tried out for The Ultimate Fighter, the TV show. I was on the first season that had females. So the UFC said that they would never have female fighters. And I always said when I'm good enough to be there, the UFC will have females. And that's exactly what happened. So I was on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter with females, season 18. And I beat the person that they thought was going to win the whole show. I had to fight her to get onto the show, and I beat her. So, yeah, so that was my start to getting to
Whoa.
the UFC. Yeah.
Wow. And so Okay, so season 18. Everybody go check out season 18 of this. And now you went somewhere in the Middle East and were the first woman to, and where was that and how did that all work?
Yeah, so I don't know how many years ago it was now, but
Yeah.
I was with the UFC for almost 10 years, and one of my fights, I got a fight contract to fight in Abu Dhabi, which was my fight was the first female fight in the UFC in the Middle East, which I ended up winning that fight. And then shortly after that, COVID hit, and then Abu Dhabi became Fight Island for hosting fights because of the COVID restrictions. They were able to
Oh, they
sort all
didn't
that
have
out
them.
and get past. Yeah, well, they did, but they went through all the loopholes that needed to happen, whereas some of the states and different places wouldn't allow it. So
Right,
that was one
right.
of the places that allowed these fights to happen. So UFC would charter a flight with all the fighters out there, and we'd have a hotel just for us. And then, but yeah, the first Abu Dhabi fight was before all that, so there was a crowd and everything. So that was quite the experience to be a part of.
Amazing. And just anytime you get to say I was the first to do anything is such an honor. It's like groundbreaking pioneer going and doing it when I don't know, when there's probably lots of voices saying that you shouldn't, you can't, you won't,
Yeah,
and then you
yeah,
just say,
for sure.
watch me.
Yeah, yeah. So I was lucky to get a lot of these sort of firsts with the UFC being at the start of it. I mean, there were women pioneers way before me that helped
Yeah.
pave the way, but a lot of them didn't get the kind of spotlight that I was able to get with it all, unfortunately, because they helped me get to where I got to.
Mm, I like it. Wow. Well, man, oh man, Sarah, thank you. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me, with us, and sharing a little bit. And I hope that there's some young woman who hears this and picks it up. And so I want to let you know, listeners, that all the contact information for Sarah will be in the show notes. And Sarah's based out of Parksville, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island. But you can Zoom call with her, right? You can pay to Zoom and who knows where it can go from there. I don't know about this kind of training, but what we're going to talk about next, anyways.
Yeah.
You can sort out all that, how that works. So thanks. Is there anything that you have not said yet that you would like to say before we end this conversation today?
No, I think that's all good. Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah, thank you. And it's Allie, and find your joy. And do remember to like and subscribe, and talk to you soon. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you found a piece of your joy in this episode, I would love to hear about what came up for you so that we can continue to grow the impact of this show. Thanks again. See you soon. And remember, find your joy.